Hi everyone, it's Kevin at Bear Creek. Welcome to September 22nd, 2020, the first day of fall. Ironically, it's probably the warmest day we've had in the last probably 2 weeks. About 70 degrees today. All the bees are extremely active today. Not a lot of nectar out there at all, if any. They are hitting my ultra bee pretty steady. I rarely see my bees go after ultra bee, but even in the spring they don't even touch it. So it's kind of good to see it. Anything that can promote brood laying, the later the better. I'm all for to build up these colonies and keep them built up until they're completely put to bed. I've had a lot of questions posed to me about wintering my hives every year. What do I do? My configurations, this, that, and the other. And I experiment a lot. Now, the first thing I want to say is, I'm here in central Wisconsin, and I watch a lot of videos and I've seen a lot of configurations, and it's really funny. I chuckle at a lot when I see videos about wintering bees, and people watch the videos, and the author or the host of the videos don't describe where they're from at all. And then you realize maybe they're in Texas or California or Georgia or Florida or Tennessee, South Carolina, and that matters, especially when it comes to wintering bees. It absolutely matters. Now, if they're, a northern beekeeper, around Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, things like that, and you are also, those are things to start paying attention to. If they're from the south, probably not paying attention as much. If they're from Canada, I have a similar winter here as they do in let's say Manitoba, Canada, with the exception that the days are shorter up there in the winter than they are here, so they don't have the rise and fall of temperatures like we do here. So again, it's very, very important to figure out when you're watching videos how it applies to your bees. Like I said, all beekeeping is local. I've said that I don't know how many times in my videos, and it doesn't apply any more than when it comes to wintering your bees. I went back and looked at my videos, and I have to do this. And there's a reason why I record videos, and it's a journal for me, a video journal on what I did, when I did it, and the successes or failures of what I did. It's not only entertainment for other people and educational for other people, but it's very educational for me. So I spent a lot of time looking at past videos to see what I've done in the past and what worked and what didn't work. And a lot of it goes in my mental bank too, but I forget things that had happened and the reasons that it happened. And then I'm doomed to repeat mistakes that I make. So, I want to share with you what has worked for me, what has not worked for me, what I'm still struggling with in my beekeeping configurations and feed. A few of the biggest things that I have found that are absolute keys to successful beekeeping in the winter. Number one, you got to have your mites under control. That's huge. You can, get a colony through, but all of a sudden you'll see bees out on the snow, and you'll be bleeding bees all year long. And then come March, they don't have enough of a cluster left to keep themselves warm. So they'll end up perishing, and you'll find a big pile of bees dead. So keep getting your mites under control is a big issue. And I'm not going to rank these, but having a big colony, big vibrant colony going into winter, and I'm not talking, you know, where bees have got to be pouring out. Oh, look, there's pollen coming in. Or bees are pouring out the front of the hive in the fall. That's probably actually too big, depending on the size. But having a big enough colony to maintain a cluster all winter long is extremely key, especially if they're going to start rearing brood in March or February. They got to have enough bees to keep the brood nice and warm. So that is a big extreme. If you run it, if you have a hive that is fairly weak or kind of on the border, and you're just like, man, I'd really like to get this colony through. Guess what? Don't even try. And let me reiterate this. I am talking to northern beekeepers. I am not talking to people down in, you know, southern Illinois, all the way down to Texas and Florida and everything else. I am talking about beekeepers, you know, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, northern Ohio, those beekeepers. You know, you even have a different climate up in Maine and Vermont, but it's close to what we have. But your fall buildup and your spring buildup is a lot different than mine. So what are the things, other things that are key besides mites and a nice healthy population of bees going in? One is getting your colonies fed up to weight. And I'm not one that puts a scale on my bees. I just heft my colonies, and I do a judgment call. I kind of know what a single hive and, you know, bottom and top will weigh, and when I pick it up, if I can't really budget to pick it up, I'm pretty well happy that it's probably up to weight. If I can easily pick it up, man, it needs some sugar, water, sugar syrup, 2 to 1, fast. So getting them up to weight and getting that in time for them to cure it is an absolute necessity. You can't feed them in late October or mid-October and expect them to put it away, cure it, because it'll, number one, it'll ferment. It'll number two, it'll probably just sit there and it'll just be moisture in the hive. I have made the mistakes in the past and put frame feeders in, syrup in the frame feeders, and in October, and the bees didn't touch the syrup. So all that moisture stayed in the hive all winter long. The funny thing is the cluster is warm enough, it actually will keep the syrup liquid. Now, it won't be frozen, but that much moisture, like right next to the cluster, is probably not a good thing. So if I've got to feed them late, I'll do some open feeding or bucket feeding and see what they take down. Watch your bucket feeding, because you know the extremes thermal changes from cold nights to warm days will make the buckets leak, and man, oh man, you can get syrup down the bottom of those colonies, which drown bees, which is not a good thing. So, you know, making sure that the hives are up to weight, another big key. One of the things that I've played with in my time here is the size of my colony boxes. I have gone in with double 10 frame boxes. I've gone in with singles. I've gone in with hives and a half with a single and a super. I've had double 5 frame nukes. I've had triple 5 frame nukes, and I've had single 5 frame nukes. And I've gone back and I've kind of looked at what my successes were and failures were, and I honestly, I can't come to a consensus because, you know, maybe, you know, well, that hive was a double and it died. That hive was a double and it survived. Well, what was the difference? It's quite possible that that hive was healthier, had a better mite content, and had more bees in it, and than this hive that didn't. Um, it's quite possible that that hive was a different strain of bees that don't winter well. They are active, more active during the winter, and they run through their stores quicker than the other hive. That can be a factor too. There's a lot of there's a lot of factors that come into play, and you just have to, roll with the punches. Now, last year was probably my best year of wintering bees, and I only got like 55 to 60% through the winter. So I lost 45% of my bees. Now I started with, over 20 hives, so when I ended up with quite a few bees to start the spring with. So the more hives you have, better your odds are for going forward. But that's getting a little bit away from the topic of today. So another lesson that I learned that is helpful for me is having plenty of venting in my hives. That is very good for keeping a healthy colony in the winter. I was always under the understanding blocking it off and just having a small entrance. It'll allow airflow to come in, and it won't affect the bees too much. But what I ended up finding out was bees pile up, block the entrance, and in March, moisture starts building up in the hive rather rapidly because now you've blocked off that entrance, and moisture builds up and it ends up killing the cluster in there very, very quickly. So last year I pulled all my entrance reducers for my full-size colonies and any 5-frame nukes that had the similar bottom boards. I pulled all the entrance reducers off and I installed these. And what this is just number 4 hardware cloth, 1/2 inch, and it's bent into a V. Now it's it's 5 wide, and however long you need it to fit in your entrance. And what it does is a couple of things. Number 1, it allows full ventilation in your bottom board all the way across. But number 2, it stops mice. Mice can't get through this. So it's a mouse excluder, and it's also allows for full venting of your bottom. Huge in this. And I have this for the full-size hives here, and I have made up some for my 10-frame boxes as well. You're just going to have to kind of, because sometimes the bottom boards are a little wider or longer, and so you're going to have to count the number of squares and make them up yourself if that's something that you want to do. So I have done that. The second part about this, and I've watched a ton of videos, everybody, as far as the venting is concerned, and everybody is doing something different. Some people are putting moisture boards on. Some people are putting, just the wooden inner covers, the standard wooden inner covers in. Some people are putting Vivaldi boards on, which is a vented contraption that fits on top of your hive, where you put a material like wood chips or burlap or something to absorb the moisture. And I'm going to tell you right now that I would never consider that in a million years, because all that does is trap moisture. It doesn't expel moisture, and you never want to trap moisture in there. And people will say, well, it's got vents on the outside. That's true, it does. But all it's going to do is dry out the outside of, let's say, that burlap or the wood chips, where the the chips will just be soaked with moisture, and you never want to keep moisture inside the hive. That's number one. So I don't even think about that as an option for me. Now, some people make it work, and some people don't, but it really depends on probably where your hives are located too. Some people call it wintering, and they put those things on, and they don't have winters really at all. So always pay attention to all beekeeping is local. What I have found that, now what I did last year is I installed these little shims. Now these are only 1.5 inches, I think. I made these up. It's a shim board, and what it is a feeder shim. And I made them up so that I could put either sugar bricks or mountain camp on or anything. But the secondary thing is that it does have a upper vent, which also serves as an upper entrance for cleansing flights later. As the bees get up in your hive, they can enter and exit. Now I won't put these on, I wouldn't put these on until robbing season is done for you. You know, the bees are pretty much put to bed and they're not out, you know, robbing other hives or anything like that, because all it does is gives another spot for the bees to do. The second thing about this is I've debated back and forth. There is trains of thought as to whether the bees need an upper entrance or not, or an upper vent. I still do not know if it's needed or not. But watching my videos and whatnot, and I haven't made a conclusion one way or the other, but one of the conclusions that I've come up with is I don't think it hurts a thing to put this on. And that's something that, so if it doesn't hurt and it could help, why not just do it? I had debated this year. I have bees here at the home apiary. I have bees out at the farm apiary, and next year I'll have a third apiary actually starting. It's going to be my nucleus apiary. And I was going to experiment and put these shims on all of my hives out at the farm, and all these hives I was not going to put it on. But I've sat and watched the videos, and I didn't see anything one way or the other that told me that doing this helped or hurt. But I can guarantee you it didn't hurt a thing on any of my colonies. So I guess the better safe than sorry aspect of it comes into play. As far as the feed is concerned, that is something that I've debated with myself on, and what I've come to realize is that I put these on last year, actually, when I put the mountain camp on. That was in December. And what happened is that the bees went straight for it. And that's what they'll do. They will leave the honey alone, and they will go right for the sugar. And why do they do that? Because they think that they view the sugar as untapped resource instead of stored resource like their honey. So they will go right for it and consume that before they will even touch their honey. Downside to that is if you have a double hive, you know, let's say the cluster is, you know, basketball or soft, or let's say it's volleyball shaped in your hive, they'll go all the way up to the top, and they will be eating that sugar while bees on the side will be consuming the honey around it. Now, once they consume all that sugar, they won't go back down after that honey. They will stay up on top, especially in colder days. Now, warmer days, yeah, they'll go back down after it. The bees naturally move up. They don't move down naturally. They will stay up at top and they will starve up there, and you will have honey down below, and you're wondering how they ever starved out. Um, so I try not to put feed on until they absolutely need it. Um, and you can do that by going out and hefting your hives, or you can, if you have a little, I have a little attachment I put on my Android phone. It's a FLIR thermal imager, and I can determine where my bees are at in my hive. And if they're all the way up at the top, and I don't have any feed on them, I know that they're starting to run out. So I can go in, pull off my insulation, and slap some feed on them. But yeah, one of the mistakes you can make is putting the feed on too early in the year. So that was kind of a lesson that I learned. So what I'm going to do this year is, I was going to do the experiment on half my hives, and I'm not. I'm going to put these shims on every single one of my hives because I don't think it hurts a thing. The next thing that I have to say about this, and I don't have one here, but actually you can see it right here. Now I have a flexible inner cover, Reflectix, that I use on top. If you don't install a piece of insulation on top of that Reflectix, you'll get frost built up from condensation from the cluster on the bottom side of that Reflectix, which is foil based, and it will melt and drip down on top of the cluster, and your bees will slowly die. They can't keep up with how that moisture literally cools the cluster down, and they can't generate enough heat, and you will quickly kill your colony. So I take, this is Kingspan Green Guard, and I buy this 2-inch, it's like $27.50 for a 4x8 sheet, and I cut it up into sizes that'll fit under my lid, and I install it directly over my flexible inner cover. Now, when I do the shim, what will happen is I will have the flexible inner cover will be on top of this, and then this will go on top of the flexible inner cover, okay? And that way, and if I put this on early enough, like, in the next week or so, well, actually in the next 2 weeks, because I don't want to do it too early because of this entrance. You can plug this up if you want and pull them out later. It's up to you. But I want the bees to propolize this shim to the top of the hive. Right now they actually have the inner cover, this flexible inner cover propolized, and that's really good for sealing airflow. You want the bees to seal up all the cracks in the hive. That's another issue. That's why on my doubles, I don't crack the hive at all. Never crack the hive. Crack boxes, I should say, between each other, because it can let airflow through, and that's kind of not good for a colony. And they can't get around to repropolizing it. So that's kind of my configuration for my bees. Couple of tips for new beekeepers especially, and I know, and I was guilty of this actually early in my beekeeping. I wanted to peek in on my girls in the wintertime. And I wouldn't do it very often, and I'd try to pick a nice day, 40-degree day, but you have no idea what it takes for the bees to recover when you pull the cover off, how much heat is lost when you do that, even for a very, very short time. It takes a lot for them to recover from that, and you can slowly kill a cluster by doing that. There's a 4-part series by Ralph Buchler. He's a German scientist, a bee biologist, that did a 4-part series at the National Honey Show this past year. And in his discussion, he had a study where they wanted to, you know, they did the study, and I won't go into the study at all, but anyways, they had apiaries, you know, kind of all over, and one of the apiaries, one of the scientists' jobs was to check the clusters and record, you know, bee density and things like that in the apiary. And you know, in previous years, you know, they hadn't done this, but you know, this was not just a year-long study. This was a, you know, multi-year study, and they had no problems with their apiaries and the bees surviving the winter. And he went in, I can't remember if it was once a week or once every 2 weeks, and he, you know, weighed the hives. He, you know, checked cluster size, measured cluster size and whatnot. And when it came down to, I can't remember if it was February or what, but 90% of his hives were dead by February or March. And he called the head guy, Ralph Buechler, and he explained to him, you know, he goes, I told you this was going to happen, and all the bees are dead. And, you know, they were flabbergasted. They were like, why in the world are all these bees dying? We've had this study going for, you know, 3 years now. We've never had this problem. What could be the issue? And the funny thing was is that they had other apiaries set up, so they went and they checked all the other apiaries, and they were fine. So what was the difference? Well, the difference is that somebody was going and uncovering the lids every week, and the bees couldn't recover. They were getting chilled out and reducing numbers, and finally died because they lost so many bees. So that was an ancillary part of that study, that they had discovered that opening and closing your hives, regardless if it's a nice day or not, is a bad idea in the midwinter. Now, if you have a dilemma where you have hefted the hive and you're like, man, that's pretty light, you have two options. You can let them starve, or you can get feed on them and expose them to chill for a little bit. And if that's the case, then you definitely do what you can to get feed on them. Open it up, short time, put your mountain camp on or your sugar bricks or whatever, and close it up. But get that feed on them. But you don't have to go in and lift the lid just to peek in at your girls. You don't have to do that, and be absolutely as minimal as possible. You think you're only doing it for a couple seconds, but you have no idea how much heat loss you will lose by doing that. So try to refrain from that and just let Mother Nature take its course. One of the issues that I ran into for several years, and I've narrowed it down somewhat. I still don't have a definitive answer, but I think I know what's happening. I have some nucleus colonies that have fixed board bottoms, and I have that entrance wheel. You know, and the entrance is, you know, it's a 3/4 of an inch hole, and it's got an entrance wheel, you know, where you turn it and you can change it however you want. But it's got that just that entrance wheel, so there's no way to open up the full entrance on those. And I have tried to overwinter bees in that configuration for past 3 years, and I haven't gotten a single colony through. Now, why is that the case? And I'm going to show a little clip from a video I did this spring, where I had these bees were absolutely healthy in March. I put mountain camp on them, I put sugar bricks on them, and they had a ton of bees, no problem whatsoever. And then, you know, March rains came, and it rained a lot, actually. And I went into the colony, and there wasn't a single bee alive. And I pulled the frames out just to check on, you know, like what happened, you know, do an autopsy on it. And the frames, the empty frames were full, and I'm saying full of water. And I looked at my configuration, my lids are solid, and you know, and not only do I have a lid, but I have this sitting under the lid. There is no way water can get through this, none. So how did rain get in there? And number two, I have this on. There is no way that much condensation occurred in this colony, none whatsoever. And the funny thing was is that the sugar on top was dry. So where did all this moisture come from? The only thing I could come up with for an answer was in that closed off hive. You know, I even had a back vent, upper vent in the lower box in the back with a screen over the top of it, so I could get kind of cross vent going through. The only thing I can come up with is that, you know, maybe between this and the box, sideways rain came in and was dripping. And when I say rain, I mean I'm talking about all night rains. And it dripped down to the bottom of the box. And the bottom of the box doesn't have, because the hole is above the bottom, it can't exactly just drain out. So it actually, the water can actually sit down there. It can actually freeze too, but it can sit down there. And I think they drop sugar down there, mixes with the water, and becomes sugar water. And I think they pick that up and bring it up into the cells, and all that moisture in those cells chilled the colony on when it got cold again, because it was only March, and you're going to get cold nights. And that was it for the colony. Just absolutely killed it. They could not maintain a temperature in there. I literally took the frames and I shook them, and just water just streamed out of these frames. It was just amazing how much water was in these. It's like 3 pounds in each frame of water. Absolutely incredible. And you sit there and you look, and it's like, well, where did all this come from? And that is the only explanation that I can come up with. And I had other followers that said that they have experienced the exact same thing. Now, they didn't tell me the configurations of their hives, but it was the only explanation that I could come up with. So, what can solve that issue? Number one was, I am going to only the full-size bottom boards like there are here. I'm going away from those for wintering. For during the summer, I never have that problem. So just to raise the bees for a nuke, they're great. And for transporting them, they're fantastic to transport them, because I just close that wheel off and take them for a ride, and I don't have to worry about bees in my truck. But for overwintering, man, that can be an issue. Now, I have 2 4-frame hives over there, and I kind of forgot about this aspect of it, and they are my late splits that I did, my late swarm splits that I did. And now I'm sitting there going, holy man, what am I gonna do? And the funny thing was is that it rained like a son of a bitch last week and a half ago. And I had a bucket on top, and rain had kind of like just seeped down under the bucket and into the hole and down to the bottom, and the whole bottom of the hive was full of water, which tells me that the hives can't obviously drain any water. Now, like I said, I forgot. I wanted to drill some holes down there and put some screens on to drain these hives. So what I ended up doing recently was I just took a small drill bit like this, and I just drilled holes around the bottom of those hives, so that if any water does accumulate down there, it has an out. Now, this is a very, very small hole. It can get clogged up very, very quickly. I just didn't want a really big hole that bees can come in and go in at all. So I chose this. Maybe it's too small, but I drilled several. We'll see how it works for this winter. But I'm trying new things for that. So I've kind of gone over what my configuration is for my colonies, how I am going to be overwintering the bees. And I can't stress this enough, especially for newer beekeepers. You know, I do things by trial and error. I've watched millions of videos and I've watched other people with their configurations. I have tried different things to find out what works best for me here, central Wisconsin, in my apiary, in my bees. And I'm dialing it in to what I think would work best. You have to do the same thing. Unfortunately, you just can't copy what Kevin does and be successful at it. It might work for you, it might not work for you, but you know, watch enough and read enough and decide for yourself what you think is the best way to go. I don't happen to think that, you know, installing these major contraptions will work well anywhere. Maybe in the South it'll work better than here because they don't have anywhere near the winters that we do. All I'm saying is it's not necessary up here. That's my one conclusion that I've come up with. Sorry, I keep looking back, making sure my dog hasn't run off because he has a habit of doing that when I talk to the camera. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, you know, I talked about putting mountain camp on. That's an idea. And mountain camp, all it is you put a piece of newspaper down over the top of your frames. You set this down, and then you pour granulated sugar directly over, you know, and fill this up. And put the lid back on, and away you go. And the sugar will actually absorb moisture and get relatively hard, and the bees will consume it. That is one option that people can do. Number two is sugar bricks. Now I forgot to bring the mold out, but I have these little plastic. Lunch meat comes in them. And I buy them from the store with lunch meat in them, and they're a little plastic with lids. And I found, I pressed sugar in there, just sugar and just a little bit of water, pressed it in there, and with a little bit of water, and it gets hard, and it comes out in a brick, and it'll fit right in there. Now the problem with that is, you put, you know, two in, and then the bees start eating it in the center, and then you have these two, you know, semi-eaten ones, and you're trying to put a third on, but you can't get it in there because of you know, the thickness of your shim. So what I did last year is I made sugar bricks, but I scored the bricks, and I put them in the oven, and after I put a little bit of water, and I got them to mash down. You know, I actually made a tray out of this, about a little less than the thickness of a shim, and I put it in the oven at like maybe 150 degrees, something very, very low, for about 45 minutes. And sugar bricks got very, very hard, very, very quick. And because I had scored them, I took them out and I was able to snap them off, and I made little sugar cubes. And I can put the sugar cubes right directly over the cluster in a way. When the bees start eating them, I can place more of these smaller sugar cubes over the cluster if I need to, as the spring progresses. I just found that worked absolutely the best for me. Just again, by trial and error, from mountain camp to big bricks of sugar. What I found with the mountain camp is you pour all this 5 pounds of sugar in here, and you get it in there, and they eat the center out, and everything on the corners stays, and they don't go after it to the side. So all that is essentially wasted. So why put anything there to begin with? That's why I said I can put all these little sugar cubes right over the cluster, just in the center, and then, you know, as they eat it through on a nice day, I can come back and I can put just a few more cubes in, and they'll do it, and they'll consume that as well, and that's just emergency feeding for them. A lot of my hives, like I said, they went right for the sugar, but when I went into the hives, they actually had quite a bit of honey left over. So I was actually, you know, quite shocked. They actually ate the sugar and not the honey. So, you know, do what works for you, and do it at the right time. That's all I'm saying. You know, you can wait till January to put your sugar bricks on. You can wait till February or March, just depending on the weight of your hive. Heft it up. Now sometimes it gets frozen on these things, and when you try to heft it, it's like, oh my God, is that heavy? Because it's actually literally stuck to your stand, and you're not getting a real good indication. But you do the best you can. You know, bring your hive tool out, and you know, crack it loose, and give it a little heft. It ain't gonna bother the bees a bit. Can't believe I forgot this part, so I had to re-record it. But it's important information that I felt necessary, especially for newer beekeepers. I was talking a little bit about, you know, the hive configurations that I've wintered in, you know, doubles, double 10 frames, double or single 10 frames, double 5 frames, triple 5 frames, single 5 frames, double 4 frames, and, you know, what have I you know, concluded about that? One of the things that I found success in, for me, I have seen people successfully overwinter doubles, no problem. Like Mike Palmer up in Vermont, he overwinters his double hives absolutely no problem whatsoever, and very, very successfully. Me, when I tend to overwinter my hives, as my colony shrinks, it's too much space for my bees to heat the space. So I want to keep, number one, I want to keep the bees, you know, in an area that that cluster can keep nice and warm. Doesn't have to work overtime for. Number two, I want them always in contact with honey. That's important. You know, if you're used to having very strong colonies coming out of winter, then you might be able to go with, you know, 2 brood boxes, 3 brood boxes. Heck, Tim Ives down in Indiana, he does 3 brood boxes. I think that's how he winters them. You know, me, there's no way I could get away with that. You know, if I have 5 frames of bees left over to start spring, I'm I consider myself extremely fortunate. So that small of amount of bees, when you have a warm day, they can break a cluster and move to go, some of them will move to go get honey from another area in the hive. And then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, temperature drops, and now these bees are stuck here and these bees are stuck here. Smaller clusters, and they can't maintain their heat because they're in smaller clusters. And that can be very, very dangerous. So keeping them in contact with honey at all times is almost a must. So what I've done in my 10 frame box is actually, I have a 2 frame feeder in there that takes up 2 frames, so I have only 8 frames. So my clusters stay in contact with the honey. They don't have to move over to the left or to the right. They just stay in contact with it at all times. Same way with my 5 frame boxes. You know, 5 frames isn't really enough honey for them for the winter, but 10 frames is. And since it's a narrower volume, they are always in contact with the honey as they move up. They can't, you know, when they move over to the left or the right, they stay in contact with each other and the honey. Same with the 4 frames as well. And you know, like I said, with my triples, for whatever reason, that's just too big a volume for that size cluster to keep the entire column heated very well. And I've never been successful at it, at least in the 5-frame configurations. That's why I keep my 5-frame boxes to doubles. My singles 10-frame boxes have 8 frames. Most of them, some of them still have 10 frames. I didn't put the feeder in. I think I got lazy this year and didn't put a feeder in. As a matter of fact, I just hefted one because I replaced the bottom board, and man, that thing was heavy. And they'll have plenty of honey. They hopefully should winter very, very well. Queen's second year, you know, if the queen can stay healthy, we'll see. But I wanted to just to put it out there why I configure in certain configurations when maybe other people do, you know, have more success with double 10-frame boxes. Almost every one of my frame and a half, I had a Hive and a half. I had a 10-frame super or a 10-frame box and a 10-frame super, 9-frame super on top, full of honey, and I had 5 of those. 4 of them died last year. Believe it or not, they they starved out. Don't know why. Maybe it was just too cold and they needed that much more energy and they consumed it faster. I have no idea, but 3 out of the 4 ended up dying. The 4th, they were all up in the upper super, and there was probably 3 frames of bees left, and it took forever for them to recover. They finally did, but I didn't get any honey off that colony this year. They finally did recover, but like I said, it took a lot out of them. But I just wanted to reiterate why I configure my bees in certain configurations. The more you can keep the bees away from getting off of the honey at any time during the winter, the better off you'll be. They stay in contact with each other and in contact with honey, it's all the better. That's it for my wintering bees discussion. If you haven't started yet, get on it right now, especially if you live in the north. Best of luck to you. Let me know how things are going. And hey, in the comments section, let me know what has been working for you. Where you live is very, very important. So put that there too. I mean, I don't need to know the city or anything like that, but just say, hey, I'm from Ohio, or I'm from Pennsylvania, or wherever. I'm from Montana, and this is what works for me. I'd love to read all that stuff. Honestly, I really do. I get a kick out of reading it, and I get a lot out of it myself. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you do subscribe to my channel. Click the subscribe button below. A shameless plug, I'm still making my beekeeper's tool pouch. So if you're interested in one, send me an email to Bear Creek Honey, wi@gmail.com, and I will send you an invoice via PayPal. And don't get offended if you just email me inquiring about it. I send you the invoice. Don't worry, I can always cancel the invoice. It's not that big a deal. I just send out the invoice, and you can pay it or not, any way you want. I change what I put in my tool pouch as the season progresses. I carry lighter in there now. I carry a multi-tool now, pliers, knife, everything in there. So, and it's got scissors on it. This is a Leatherman. This is a Wingman. This has worked really well for me. And of course, I carry my queen cage with me. Now, I use this way more in the spring and the summer than I do in the fall. You could swap that out with anything you want in the fall. But I started making these in, I think, March of 2019, and you know, as of now, I probably made around 300 of them for customers. I've had, literally, I've had 2 returned. One because it was a smaller woman and the magnet was too extreme for her to take the Hive tool off of. And the other one was he ordered 2 and he only wanted 1, so he returned 1. I've had a lot of repeat customers that have bought one and they ordered more, whether they be for their commercial workers or for their spouse or for their friends that are in beekeeping too. If you have a club, you know, that it makes a good giveaway, or a raffle tool, or a, you know, raffle item, if you want it. Earlier this year when the COVID hit, not to mention I had a job that took me away 70 hours a week, I got way behind in making them. You know, I was 30 days out of getting the materials delivered to me. But now I don't, there's not that problem anymore. I have plenty of time to make them. My material delivery is a lot faster, so I can get your Hive tool pouch out to you very, very quickly. So if you're interested, again, shoot me an email, bearcreekhoney@gmail.com. And if you have any questions on or comments about wintering bees, I'm all ears, man. You know, love to learn. If you've come up with a secret success, I'd love to hear how the special sauce is made. So, till next time, happy beekeeping. Remember, all beekeeping is local. Take that to heart. Have a great fall.